We start off with 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar, and a half a teaspoon of table salt. We're going to go ahead and use a whisk and mix these together thoroughly. And we're mixing directly in the bowl for my stand mixer, which just cuts down on the amount of dishes I have to do later. I want to make sure that this is incorporated well because we are going to make the base and also part of our topping. We're going to use a paddle attachment and we're going to slowly add in 16 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And we're going to add them 1 tablespoon at a time to our mixer and get them mixed in. Now, the reason we want to do these one at a time is because we're looking to achieve a very specific texture, and that's a coarse sand texture that we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so you can see as I mix these all in. All 16 tablespoons. Here we go. So we're mixing this on a low speed. I think I had it on either 2 or 3. And this is the texture we're looking for. See this coarse sand texture where all the butter is evenly distributed and it's easy to kind of run through my fingers. That's what we're looking for. Looking really pretty. All right, we're gonna reserve 1¼ cups of this mixture that's gonna get added into our streusel topping. So just put that in a separate bowl and set to the side. Now I have prepped a 13 by 9 pan with aluminum foil hanging over the sides, which will make for an easy transfer out of the pan to cut the bars. And I'm also going to spray this with a nonstick spray. Because this has a jam layer that's pretty sticky, I want to make sure we get the sides of the pan as well. Now we're going to go ahead and sprinkle the mixture, the shortbread bar mixture that we just made in the mixer, all evenly throughout the pan. So I'm just going to use my hands to kind of get it evenly spread out and distributed to the whole entire pan. And this is layer number 1 of the raspberry streusel bar. So this is the bar part, and it's pretty much a shortbread layer that we're putting in. So I'm going to use my hands, spread out these crumbs evenly, and then press into the pan, the bar. We want to have this pressed evenly, and I always like to pay special attention to the sides so they don't creep up on you. Now we're going to pop this into the oven in a 375-degree oven for 14 to 18 minutes. We're going to flip halfway through. We want to get just some on the edges browning. This is our topping. So we have brown sugar, we have pecans, we have rolled oats, we have vanilla bean that's been ground, and also some fresh nutmeg that I added in. Then, of course, that bit of the bottom layer that we had set aside. So we're going to mix all of this together in a small bowl, and this is going to be our 3rd layer. So I'm just getting this prepped and ready. We have to compile this whole bar while the bottom layer is still hot. So it's important that you have everything ready to go. So the pecans are toasted. I am pretty big on toasting my own nuts, no pun intended. And so what I did last night was I just laid out the pecans onto a cooking sheet, baking sheet. I sprayed with a little bit of olive oil, a dash of salt just to kind of keep things going. I just popped it into a 375-degree oven for about 7 to 8 minutes, and every 2 minutes I would just check and stir them. And then I hand chop them to the chopped level that you see in this streusel topping. I've just found that chopped nuts don't toast as well in the oven, and also they're not as fresh tasting when I use them in recipes. So I prefer to just start with the whole nut and work my way down. So I'm breaking up all the pieces of the brown sugar just to make sure that this streusel topping is really easy to evenly distribute on the top. We want every bite of this bar to have all of the components that are included in the recipe. That's like the beauty of a bar, is that you should get everything in every single bite that you have. So the last ingredient in this topping, of course, is butter. You can't have a streusel topping without butter. So this is just 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I have them cut into pieces, and I'm just going to distribute them into the bowl, pretty easily and evenly. And then I'm going to use my hands to pinch this butter into this streusel topping mixture. And this is a pretty common way of making a streusel topping. All right, so this is the texture we're going for. You can see it, everything's evenly distributed. Wherever I'm gonna toss this, whatever handful I pick up is gonna have all of the flavors that are in this Streusel topping. We're ready to go. Next up, we have our 3/4 cup of raspberry jam and 3.5 ounces of fresh raspberries plus 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm gonna go ahead and pour the lemon juice into this bowl, and then we're gonna use a fork to mash up this mixture. We're really just looking to get rid of the big chunks of raspberry. So this is what it should look like. So we don't want it to be like a puree, which is why we use a fork. We also don't want like large chunks of raspberry because that's gonna be really hard to get into an even layer in the bar. So this is looking pretty good. So what we're looking for that second layer. All right, we have our bottom layer. You can see that browning around the sides we were looking for is here. And now we're gonna compile the rest of the bar. And again, while it's still hot, we wanna go ahead and pour the jam layer completely over the shortbread crust. And the really important part about this assembling piece is one, that you do it while the bottom is hot, because that's how you're gonna get the results you want, but also that we evenly distribute all of the ingredients. And so for this raspberry layer, that means really taking my time and getting to every single edge of this bar. I don't want someone to get a piece of shortbread and a streusel with no raspberry in the middle or any other piece that's missing from it. So I'm pretty fastidious about just making sure we really get everything distributed all the way to the ends of the bar, all the way evenly, all the way around. These are the hallmarks of good baking. So I always say the two things that make baking successful are measurements. So we want to make sure that, I use my scale here, I weigh everything. And the second is even distribution. And that is like the critical key to successful bakes, no matter what you're baking. That's how chemistry works, and baking is chemistry. And so we want to make sure that everything is evenly distributed. So I think we're almost there, just about getting everything kind of covered. And then we're gonna come in with this streusel topping. And so for this, we don't wanna just pour in the middle and try and use a spatula, because that will cause the raspberry layer to mix in with the streusel, and we won't get those distinct layers that we want with this bar. So I'm gonna use my hand and just sprinkle, literally sprinkle the streusel topping all across the top. And my goal is to not have any of the raspberry layer visible when I'm finished with this. So it should be completely blanketed, and really, again, paying attention to those edges, paying attention to all of the different places that the raspberry is showing, and just making sure we have a nice even coverage of the entire pan so that we can pop this back into the oven to finish baking. So this is my first time doing voiceover. I'm interested to see if y'all prefer this style or the style I did last week with a more active clipped video format. So we'll see. I'll ask all of you what you think. I'm going to get this last little bit evenly distributed. And again, just paying attention to those edges, making sure that none of the raspberry streusel is showing, or raspberry jam part is showing. And we're going to pop this back into that 375-degree oven for 22 to 25 minutes. And we are going to flip this halfway through. Now, that is just a hallmark of good baking, is flipping. Every oven has a hot spot. Every oven has some parts of it that, the way the air hits. So this is our halfway mark, and you're starting to see a little bit of the raspberry poke through, but we're still pretty blonde on top. And we're looking for bubbly filling and a nice golden brown to the top. So we have reached that place, and I'm going to pull out the bars. I'll show you here. You can see we have bubbling raspberry filling. You can see that's bubbling up, and the beautiful golden color of this streusel topping. There we go, ready to go.